So what we're doing today is we're solving equations with variables on both sides. So this isn't going to be a huge step from what we did last week. The only real difference now is that instead of having variables on one side, now we have them on both. So what that means is our first step is to get the variables on the same side. We need to gather them together. So look at our first equation here. We have 10 minus 4x equals negative 9x. 10 minus 4x equals negative 9x. So I have 4x on one side and I have negative 9x on the other, yes? So we need to get them on the same side. So we can either add 4x to both sides or add 9x to both sides. What do we want to do? I would add 4x also. Because is there anything else with the 9x? Well, the negative 9, yes? But there's nothing else added or subtracted. So if we move it over, the x's will be by themselves, because negative 4x plus 4x is 0. So we have 10 is equal to negative 9x plus 4x is what? Negative, what would that be? Put it in the calculator. Well, is x by itself? So we need to get x by itself, so we need to divide by negative 5. Because negative 5 divided by negative 5 will give us 1. It will give us x by itself. And now we need to do 10 divided by negative 5, and 10 divided by negative 5 is? Questions on this here? Not too bad so far? All right, let's look at another one. So we have 5p equals 24 minus 3p. So we have 5p on one side, negative 3p on the other. We need to get the variables on the same side. So how can I get the variables on the same side? So we can do what? I can subtract 5p from both sides, or I can add 3p to both sides. I would add 3p because I have 24 minus 3p, yes? So if I add 3p, I move the 3p from this side to this side. Do I have all the variables on one side? Would I have all the other numbers on the other side? Yeah. So it's easier to move it this way here. Is it wrong to move it 5p over? No. It's just we have to move the 10 away from it next. Does that make sense? So 5p plus 3p is, 5 plus 3 is? 8p equals 24. Oh, not 10. I don't know why I was thinking 10. So instead of 8p equals 24, what do we do next? Not that.
Oh, divide both sides by 8p.
We're going to divide both sides by 8. Because again, we want, what's our goal? To get p by itself, to find the value of p. So to get p by itself, well, I have 8p. Here I have 8p. So I'm going to divide it by 8, because 8 divided by 8 is 1. We get p by itself. 24 divided by 8 is? So the value of p is 3. Questions on this here? We good with this here so far? Y'all remembering some of this stuff from 8th grade? Yep. A little bit, kind of, sort of. Solving an equation with grouping system. So now we're bringing in parentheses, our distributive property. So what we have to do first to solve for this here is we have to distribute our numbers. So what that means for us here is for this left side, I've got to multiply both of these by 3. So I'm going to have 3 times 3x minus 4 times 3. Because again, we're using our distributive property. We're multiplying everything inside the parentheses by what's outside. We're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to have 1/4 times 32x plus 1/4 times 56. So 3 times 3x is what? 9x. 3 times 3 is 9, and then we have x. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Now I'd plug this in the calculator. I'd plug in 1/4 times 32, and it'll tell us exactly what we get. What does the calculator say 1/4 times 32 is? It is 8. It's almost the same as saying 32 divided by 4, 32 over 4. So this would be 8x. Then we can do the same thing as 1/4 times 56 is 14. Any questions on any of this here? Any questions on anything we've done so far? We good with all this here? Yes? Now we need to get the value of x by itself. So let's group x first. We're going to group the x's together. So what are the two ways we can get x on the same side of the equal sign? So I can't just combine them because of the equal sign. I have to move it, either with addition or subtraction. Well, I can't just add, because again, because of the equal sign. So we have to do the opposite. Now, since they're both positive, we're going to have to subtract 9x from both sides, or we're going to have to subtract 8x from both sides. It doesn't matter which one we do. We can do either one. What do you say, Cody? What are we going to do? Taking notes? Plus what? Okay. We can do that first. That's fine. Because, I mean, it doesn't matter if we do x or the number first, but we can add 12 to both sides. Because if we add 12 to both sides, negative 12 plus 12 cancels, yes? So I get 9x equals. Nothing changed with 8x, but 12 and 14 are like terms. And 12 plus 14 is what? 26. Are the x's on the same side? No, so we need to move what? So we need to move 8x to the other side. Well, how could I move it? We would subtract x from both sides. Well, 9x minus 8x is 1x. 8x minus 8x cancels, and I'm left with, so the value of x for this is 26. Questions on this here? Any questions on how we solve this one here? We good with this here? Yes? So what's the first thing we need to do for this here? First step in solving this for n. What do we need to do? Well, these aren't being subtracted, are they? Well, the set of parentheses tell me I need to distribute the 2 through. So what are we going to do? So distributing means I multiply. I'm going to multiply these two here. So I'm going to have 2 times 3n minus 4 times 2, because we've got to distribute that through. I have to do the same thing on the other side, don't I? Because we have to do 0.5 times 10 and 0.5 times 0.5 times 10. And I'm going to have negative n times 0.5. So we have to multiply through because of the distributive property. Now we can multiply some of these out. So 2 times 3n. What would 2 times 3n be? 2 times 3 is 6n. 4 times 2 is 0.5 times 10. 0.5 times 10 would be 5. And we have minus 0.5 n. So at this point here, so we simplified all of our distributive properties and multiplied everything out that needs to be multiplied. Now we need to get n by itself. We need to get all the variables on one side, and we need to get all the numbers on the other. So what do we need to do to get there, to get the variables on one side and everything else on the other? Well, 6n and 8 like terms. No, 6n and 8 aren't like terms. 5 and negative 0.5n aren't like terms because they don't both have the same variables. But I have 6 and negative 0.5n on either side, yes? So I need to get them on the same side. Negative 8 and 5 are like terms, so I need to get them on the same side. So most likely to get them on the same side, we're either going to need to add it to both sides or subtract it from both sides. So add something to both sides or subtract something from both sides. So what do we want to subtract? So we can subtract negative 8, or we can add 8 to both sides, yes. So when I add 8 to both sides, well, negative 8 plus 8 is, so 8 plus 8 would be 16. Well, negative 8 plus 8 is 0, so we're left with 6n. 5 plus 8 is 13 minus 0.5n. So we've got all the numbers on one side, yes? Now we need to get the variables on the other. So what do we need to move? We need to move the negative 0.5n. So how can I move it to the other side? So we add or subtract it? We would add. Since this is negative, so negative 0.5 plus 0.5 would be 0 because they cancel out their opposite sides. So on the right side, we're left with 13. Now 6 plus 0.5, if we type that in, we should get 6.5 in. Any questions on how we got to this here? We good with getting to this point here? So what do we need to do lastly? We need to divide both sides by what? 6.5, because we need to get n by itself. And if we divide both sides by 6.5, if you type in 13 divided by 6.5 into the calculator, you get what? And that's it. That's all we have to do for this here. Any questions on any of this so far? Any question on anything we've done so far? We good with these here? Yes? Yes? No? So we want 13 on top. So 13 divided by 6.5. So sometimes using the dividing sign is difficult. You can always rewrite it as a fraction. Yep. 2. So it should be 2. So you can also use this here. 13 over. So the correct answer is 2. We good? Any questions on this here? So if you have a little difficulty with the division key, you can also write it as a fraction. 13 over 6.5, and that will also give you the answer. All right, I want you all to try this one here on your own. So most of you all have started working on this so far, and you've already multiplied through by the 1/2, because 1/2 times 6h is 3h, and 1/2 times -4 is -2. So most all of you have at least gotten to this point. So when we look at this here, we need to get the variables on the same side. So the only way we can move variables and their number from one side to the other is either we add it or we subtract it. So do we want to move the -5h over this way, or do we want to move the 3h over here? Do we want to move the -5h or the 3h? It's up to y'all. It doesn't matter which one we do. You want to move? So if we want to move the 3h to this side here, yes? We can't just combine them. Because there's an equal sign, we can't just combine them. So if I'm going to move the 3h over, 3h is what? Positive or negative? So I'm going to have to subtract 3h from both sides. Because it's positive, we have to subtract it from both sides to move it from one side of the equal sign to the other. So 3h minus 3h, these two will cancel because 3h minus 3h is 0. 3 minus 3 is 0. So that leaves us with what? -5 minus 3 is what? Negative 8, -8h, and then we have +1. So to move stuff from one side to the other, if we're just moving it, so to move 3h or to move -5h, we have to add it to both sides or subtract it from both sides. Yes, sir? So do we have all the variables on one side? Now we need to move the numbers to the other. So what is the other number over here? So a -2, is it by itself? So it's not by itself. We have the +1. So to move 1 over, I've got to do what? I've got to subtract it. Because 1 minus 1 is 0, so they cancel out. So I'm left with -2 minus 1 is negative. So if -3 equals -8h, are all the numbers on one side and all the variables on the other? Yes? So I need to get in or here I need to get h by itself, yes? So what's with h? Negative 8. How are they connected? They're being what? Multiplied, yes? So how do I undo multiplication? So what am I going to divide both sides by? Negative what? Negative 8. Because we're trying to get what by itself? So what's with h? So we're going to divide both sides by negative 8 so that I get h by itself. Because negative 8 divided by 8 simplifies to 1. We can type this in the calculator and see what we get. Negative 3 over negative 8. 3.375. 0.375. So what's it as a fraction? So if you do the little buttons or the arrows. Questions on this here? We good with this here? Yes? I want you to go on and try solving this one. Let's do this one together and then we'll be done for the day. So our first step in solving this here is we've got to distribute. We've got to distribute. So the first thing we're going to multiply together is what? 3/4 and negative 3/4, thank you, and 8 in, yes? Or negative 3/4 times what? 8. Well, n is still going to be there no matter what we do. So we can really type in negative 3/4 times 8. And negative 3/4 times 8 is negative 6. Yes? And if you're a little bit impressed how I did that in my head, because 8 over 4 is what? 8 divided by 4? 2? 8 divided by 4? 8 divided by 4 is? 2 times 3 is? 6. You don't have to do it in your head, that's fine. And then what are we going to multiply? Negative 3/4 times 12. Type it in. We agree with negative 9? Yes? So what do we have to do over here? We have to distribute the 3, yes? 3 times n is 3n. Because if it's just a variable, it'll just be whatever that number is, n. Because what number really is with n over here? 1. Anything times 1 is just whatever that number is. 3 times 1. Yep. So 3 times 3 is 9. Questions on this here? So now what do we need to do? We need to get the variables on the same side. And the main way we move variables from one side to the other is either what? Addition or subtraction. And the reason we add if the number is what? Negative, and we subtract if the number is positive. Do we want to move the 3 in or negative 6 in? It doesn't matter which one we do.
Can't you do negative 9 equal to negative 9? Wouldn't that leave one of them by herself?
Subtracting these? Well, the reason we can't subtract it is because there's a brick wall right there. It's preventing us from just combining them. So we have to either add to both sides or subtract from both sides. We're trying to keep everything balanced. Does that make sense? So the main way we can keep it balanced is, so we can subtract in. So you're wanting to do the 9s first, Angel? Yes? So what would I need to do to this 9 to get it to go away? So I would need to add 9 here. Because if I want to get it to go over here, I need to add 9 to both sides. Okay? Now something special happens here. Because what is negative 9 plus 9? 0. They cancel out. What is negative 9 plus 9? So here is something a little special. When we added 9, we tried to move 9 from one side to the other. It ended up canceling out both sides. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with this. Okay? But I still need to get the ends on the same side. So when we move ends, I'm either going to add 6 into both sides or do what? Not add, but we would, because 3 is positive, yes? So what do we want to do? Do we want to add 6 into both sides or subtract 3 in from both sides? We can subtract 3, yes. So I can subtract 3 in from both sides. And when I subtract 3 in from both sides, well, 3 in minus 3 in is 0. Negative 6 in minus 3 in. Well, negative 6 minus 3 is what? Do we have all the variables on one side? Do we have all the numbers on the other side? Mm-hmm. So last but not least, what we can do is we can divide. Let me use a different color. Both sides by negative 9. Because negative 9 divided by negative 9 will simplify to 1. And 0 divided by anything is just 0. And that's it. Questions on these here?
What would you do if it was 0 though? Like,
huh?
Why would n equal 0? Like,
So,
what would you do with
so the value of n is 0. So 0 can be a value, because 0 can be a solution. Because what we're saying is if we plug 0 into this here, both sides will equal the same thing. That's the only value that works, is when the value of n is 0. Questions on this here? So